Heartwarming story, how a cleaner's amazing act revealed the hidden truth about an Arab investor. Jamal adjusted his worn cap and straightened his faded uniform as he strolled into the towering office building nestled in the heart of the city. The glass facade shimmered like a beacon of opportunity. Dust whisked away beneath his diligent hands transformed his workspace into a pristine haven. His heart swelled with pride. Every scrubbed floor and wiped table was part of something bigger, part of the never-ending pursuit to build a better life for his family across the ocean. As he polished the sleek boardroom table, whispers drifted from the corner. Talk of Samir, the controversial Arab investor, consumed the office halls like wildfire. He was rumored to upend the local businesses, those small, cherished shops where Jamal had gathered fond memories with his late father. Samir's name hung thick in the air, casting shadows over Jamal's heart, sparking anger mingled with fear. Yet, life had its way of flipping the script. One sultry afternoon, as Jamal cleared the remnants of a corporate lunch, he found himself face to face with Samir. The affluent man exuded an air of authority, but beneath his polished exterior, Jamal sensed vulnerability. When their eyes met, time froze. There was an unspoken connection, a shared understanding born from struggle. A moment later, Samir mentioned a local veteran-s charity, igniting a powerful flame in Jamal's chest. That charity was more than an organization, it was a tribute to his father's legacy. He had dedicated his life to it, providing support to veterans who needed it most. Suddenly, the lines of conflict blurred. Jamal's heart raced, and the walls of prejudice started to crumble. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue, but miscommunication can be a beast. One evening at a community event, tensions flared between supporters and detractors of Samir's plans. Jamal stood there, heart pounding like a drum, as voices escalated around him, words filled with fear and rage as two worlds collided. He felt dejected and lost, thrumming with anxiety. Should he join the chorus of dissent? Join the very voices that echoed his doubts? In that turbulent moment, Jamal summoned courage. This man supports the veterans, he shouted, and silence fell like a heavy curtain. He cares about our community. His shaky voice pierced through the chaos, igniting surprise and intrigue amidst the crowd. He spoke of unity, of forging connections, and of the values his father had instilled in him. The crowd's reaction was electric. Whispering buzz grew into palpable hope. But as applause erupted, so did a wave of uncertainty. Jamal grappled with doubt. Could he bridge this cultural gap, or would misunderstandings pull them apart? Faced with a future uncertain, Jamal's heart raced with trepidation. Would his act of bravery be enough to change hearts? Would Samir find acceptance among the very community he sought to uplift? As both men prepared to navigate the unknown, one thing was clear: the saga was far from over. The following days felt like a whirlwind for Jamal. After that decisive evening, the air around him crackled with the uneasy energy of hope and apprehension. Walking into the office each day, he found himself glancing toward the boardroom, half expecting Samir to appear with a new idea to share. But the discussions in the office grew louder, the whispers transforming into heated arguments about the future of their community. Jamal's heart sank with every jab thrown at Samir's vision. He often stood by the window during his breaks, watching as people entered and exited, their faces painted with frustration. Was this really how things had to be? The memory of his father's teachings flooded back to him: unity, acceptance, compassion. Jamal drew in a deep breath and resolved that he couldn't just stand by. That Saturday, determined to shift the conversation, Jamal organized a community gathering. He worked tirelessly to prepare flyers, scribbling notes about the true purpose of Samir's investments, emphasizing how they could benefit the veterans' charity his father had cherished. Jamal knocked on doors, engaging with neighbors, sharing the vision that had so captivated him. Slowly, he saw flickers of interest spark in their eyes. On the day of the gathering, Jamal paced nervously by the community center entrance, watching as faces arrived, familiar friends and wary strangers, all drawn together by the uncertain promise of reconciliation. As his heart fluttered, he recognized the challenge ahead. Would they be willing to listen? Would Jamal's words bring them together, or fracture their loyalties further? When it came time to speak, each word felt like a weight on his tongue. "We have a choice," he began, his voice steady but low. "To stand united as a community or allow our fears to drive us apart. Samir isn't just an investor. He wants to help us, to elevate our city and honor those who defended it." His eyes darted around the room, watching as individuals exchanged glances. Some furrowed their brows in skepticism, while others nodded cautiously. Suddenly, an elder man stood up from the back, his voice rising above the crowd. "And what if he fails? What if it all crumbles?" The murmur swelled. Jamal felt his heart race. An unexpected wave of fear washed over him. Doubts were palpable, casting shadows on his hopeful vision. He would have to confront it head-on. "I understand your fears. I share them," Jamal responded, earnest and vulnerable. "But we must give this a chance. My father wanted us to trust, to believe in change." Silence followed, heavy and tense. Then, another voice broke through. "What if we meet Samir? What if we hear it from him?" It was Elena, a gentle soul known for her kindness. Jamal's heart leaped. That could be the lifeline they needed. The crowd erupted, voices mixing in an explosion of thoughts and feelings, but Jamal felt a tiny spark of unity kindle amidst it all. This was a turning point. If they could bridge the gap through conversation, understanding could flourish. That night, Jamal couldn't sleep. His mind raced with what had been set in motion. The thought of a meeting with Samir brought a mix of excitement and dread. If they could sit together, he believed, they could dismantle the walls of division brick by brick. As dawn broke, Jamal felt a renewed energy coursing through him. He was ready to take action. But would Samir agree to meet the very community he had been trying to connect with? Would he see the value in uniting over a shared purpose, even if it meant facing doubts head-on? The answers loomed just beyond reach, teasing him with possibility. Jamal knew there was no turning back now. He would have to push forward into the unknown, confronting the fears that had held them captive for too long. Would this act of courage spark the change he desperately sought, or lead to unforeseen consequences that could unravel everything? With the sun peeking through his bedroom window, Jamal felt the weight of determination settle over him like a blanket. He couldn't shake the mix of hope and apprehension churning in his stomach as he brewed his coffee. It was time to reach out to Samir, to take that next step. The thought invigorated him, but also made him feel small. Would Samir even want to meet with him? Sipping his coffee, Jamal grabbed his phone, fingers hovering over the screen. His heart raced as he typed out a message inviting Samir to the community meeting. He hit send, and stared at the screen, hoping for a quick response. Each moment felt like an eternity. Finally, the phone chimed, jolting him. "Let us meet." "When and where?" Samir's reply was simple yet reassuring, igniting a fire of energy within Jamal. He quickly drafted a time and place, and felt like a weight had been lifted. As the meeting day approached, a mix of anxious excitement buzzed in his chest. Jamal spent each day answering questions from friends and neighbors, preparing for Samir's arrival. The community center had never felt so alive, people buzzing with the hope that today might change everything. On the day of the gathering, Jamal arrived early to arrange chairs and set up a simple refreshment table. The familiar sound of chatter filled the room as people arrived, bringing with them the look of anticipation. Laughter mixed with nervous whispers created a blanket of tension, yet there was an underlying excitement fluttering through the crowd. As the clock ticked closer to the meeting time, Jamal's hands fidgeted with the edge of a tablecloth. Just then, the door swung open, and Samir stepped in. He looked confident yet approachable, a subtle smile playing on his lips. The murmurs quieted as all eyes fell on him. "Thank you for inviting me," Samir said, his voice warm, instantly breaking the tension that had settled in the room. He scanned the crowd, meeting gazes with eagerness and purpose. I'm here to listen to you, to share my vision, and hopefully to bridge the gap between us. Jamal felt a rush of gratitude. Samir could have easily kept to himself, but he chose to step into their world, to share and connect. This was the moment Jamal had been waiting for. He stepped forward, heart pounding, and began to introduce the community's concerns and hopes. But as they started exchanging ideas, a voice called out from the back. We're tired of promises. We've seen too many projects fail. It was a woman named Rita, well known for her strong opinion and fierce loyalty to her community. A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd as they considered her words. Jamal felt his heart clench. He had hoped today would ease the tension, not ignite it further. But before he could speak, Samir held up a hand. I appreciate your honesty. Failure is a fear we all share, but I'm not here to make empty promises. I'm ready to put in the work. Let us talk about your experiences, what we need to build trust. In that moment, Jamal recognized the turning point. It wasn't just about presenting his ideas or defending Samir, it was about allowing those voices to resonate. As Samir engaged the room, Jamal watched the skepticism slowly transform into curiosity. Conversations blossomed, and shoulders that had been tense began to relax. Each question Samir answered made the community a little more comfortable, and Jamal felt the sparks of hope rekindling. Yet, hidden doubts lingered beneath the surface. Even surrounded by laughter and lively discussion, Jamal wondered if they were truly ready to embrace this change. Would this newfound energy hold? Could Samir and the community truly find common ground? As the conversation deepened, the question hung in the air, electrifying with unspoken possibilities and fears. And with that, Jamal knew they were on the precipice of something profound. Would this day mark the beginning of unity? Or would the ghosts of past disappointments keep them shackled? The discussion swirled, weaving through the room like the scent of freshly brewed coffee. Jamal felt the energy shift as Samir responded to concerns with genuine interest rather than dismissiveness. Each person's voice, hesitant at first, began to rise, cautious but eager. Ideas flowed like water breaking through a dam. Rita stood again, her arms crossed but her tone softer now. If you want to change things, show us you want to be a part of this community, not just a visitor, she challenged, her eyes fixated on Samir. And I intend to do just that, Samir replied earnestly, meeting her gaze with unwavering sincerity. Let us create something that belongs to all of us. I want to invest, not only my resources but my time and heart. I'm here for the long haul. A knot of skepticism in the crowd began to unfurl, if only slightly. Jamal could feel the collective heartbeat of the community. It was slowly quickening, the pulse of possibility echoing through every exchanged glance. Tell us about your plans, another voice called out, a younger man named David stepping forward, his confidence blooming as he saw Samir's willingness to engage. What can we expect? Samir leaned forward, enthusiasm igniting his demeanor. I've looked at this neighborhood closely. There's potential here, untapped energy. We could start with the park, turning it into a gathering space where everyone feels welcome. We can bring events, art, and services for all ages. As Samir spoke, Jamal watched the audience respond. Heads nodded, murmurs of agreement rippling through the air. It felt surreal, they were no longer passive, they were participants in a shared dream. Yet amid the growing excitement, Jamal felt a twinge of apprehension. Could it really be this simple? Was hope enough? His heart battled with his head, shifting from optimism to doubt and back again. Just as he began to think about his own role in this newfound movement, an elderly woman named Miss Clara, who had often been neglected at community gatherings, raised her hand, her voice quivering but clear. Young man, forgive me for interrupting. But many of us have lived here for decades. How do we know you won't just come in and take what little we have left? The room fell silent. Even Samir seemed taken aback. This was the raw honesty Jamal had noted before, the unvarnished truth that lay beneath their collective facade of hope. After a long pause, Samir responded, his voice steady. I understand your fears. I do. My intention isn't to uproot anything here but to grow alongside you. We'll lay the foundation together. I want every one of you in on the decision-making process. I want to make a move without your input. Jamal felt the tension in Clara's shoulders soften. Around him, whispers of agreement began to rise, a wave washing over the room. Suddenly, there was a shift. Jamal could almost hear the rusted gears of distrust starting to turn towards something more hopeful. Feet tapping nervously, once turned inwards, now pointed towards Samir, the glimmers of possibility lighting their faces. As the meeting continued, ideas crawled out into the open, each one building on the last. Samir proposed workshops to equip the community with skills. There were suggestions for using local artists for projects, food markets to celebrate diverse flavors, rejuvenating the very essence of the neighborhood. Laughter bubbled like a fresh spring. Jamal couldn't help but grin. It was happening. For the first time in a long while, he felt like change could be real, tangible, and lasting. But as their discussion stretched on, a shadow of doubt flickered at the back of his mind, whispering questions of authenticity and commitment. Would everyone truly unite behind Samir and his ideas? As excitement mingled with uncertainty, Jamal realized that they were riding a wave of momentum, but would it crash, or could they steer it safely ashore? And just as the meeting seemed to be at its peak, a loud crash echoed from outside, an unmistakable sound that brought everyone's attention back to the real world. What now? What unexpected twist awaited them just outside? The crash resonated through the room, causing a ripple of shock. Chairs scraped against the floor as attendees scrambled to their feet, faces alight with a mix of concern and curiosity. Jamal's heart raced. What could have happened? Stay here. Samir called out, his voice cutting through the rising murmurs. He turned toward the door, determination lighting his eyes. Without thinking, Jamal followed. He felt the urge to stand behind Samir, but not just for support. He had to know what lay beyond the walls of their gathering. Pushing through the door, they spilled into the street, where a few onlookers had already congregated. A delivery truck had accidentally backed into a lamppost, metal groaning as it bent awkwardly under the pressure. The driver, a young woman, sat thick-lipped and worried behind the wheel. Is everyone okay? Jamal's instinct kicked in, pushing through the crowd, and when he reached the truck, he found that a handful of onlookers had already gathered around the driver, but no one was actually stepping forward to help. That feeling of dread began to claw at him again, the weight of community, of responsibility thick in the air. Just shaken up, the driver managed to say, her eyes wide, glancing nervously between the crowd and the damage. I didn't mean to, I swear. I was just looking at my maps, and then, Jamal offered her a reassuring smile. We understand. Let us take a breath. Is there anyone who can help you? As he spoke, it struck him that here they were, standing in the street amongst neighbors, some still in their work clothes, others in sweatpants, all with their own histories and dreams. They weren't just spectators, they were a community. A pulse of shared humanity surged through him. Perhaps they could do better. Samir stepped closer, his demeanor shifting from tense to calm as he nodded toward the driver. Can we help you assess the damage? Their help with the situation seemed to thaw the ice, and gradually, people began to step forward. Hands emerged to check on the truck, eyes observing the lamppost, voices murmuring suggestions. Voices unified in purpose. Miss Clara, now moving through the gathered crowd, added her own wisdom. You know, this happens more often than you'd think. We can't keep standing back and watching things fall apart, literally. This could have happened to any one of us, and that reminds us we're all in this together. Others rallied around Clara, nodding and murmuring in agreement. The atmosphere shifted again, infused with a sense of camaraderie. It was more than just a truck and a lamppost, it was a moment intertwining community and connection, a crystallization of everything they had just begun to discuss inside. Jamal glanced at Samir, who was now engaged in conversation with the driver, offering her a contact for a towing service along with a promise that they would help navigate the insurance maze. It felt like a turning point, an intersection where dialogue could be translated into action, but just as this spark of togetherness ignited hope in Jamal's chest, a shadow fell over the scene. A man in a dark coat, unfamiliar in this part of town, watched from a distance, his expression inscrutable. Something in the way he observed them sent an unsettling wave through the crowd. Jamal could feel tension returning, an electric charge in the air. Who is that guy? He wondered aloud, his heart thumping louder than before. As eyes turned to the stranger, whispers began to circulate. Who was he, and what did he want? And just when everything seemed to be coming together, what curveball awaited them now? Would this outsider disrupt the fragile sense of unity they had forged, or could this be a chance to confront whatever threat loomed? As the crowd's murmurs crescendoed, Jamal's heart raced. The man in the dark coat shifted slightly, as if aware that a spotlight had landed on him. A heavy silence fell upon the gathered onlookers, the earlier sense of unity transforming into a collective uncertainty. Do we approach him? Jamal whispered, a mix of curiosity and fear spilling from his lips. Samir, glancing at the stranger, seemed lost in thought. His brow furrowed, torn between the safety of the group and the urge to find out what the man wanted. Let us stay calm, he finally said, raising his voice for the others to hear. Maybe he's just passing through. But Jamal wasn't convinced. The stranger's presence felt like a storm cloud hanging over them, unpredictable and charged. He sensed a crack in their newfound connection, a potential rift that could unravel this moment of solidarity. Excuse me. Jamal called out, defying his own anxieties. The eyes of the crowd swiveled back to him, uncertainty dancing on the edges of their expressions. He forced himself to step closer to the man, a sense of responsibility propelling him forward. Are you okay? Do you need help? The man's eyes flickered with surprise, then hardened as he stepped from the shadows. I'm looking for someone, he replied, his voice low but edged with urgency. Who? Jamal asked, his heart pounding fiercely in his chest. The driver, the man said, nodding toward the truck. I need to speak with her. The crowd stirred restlessly, whispers erupting again as Jamal tilted his head, studying the stranger more closely. Was he from the delivery service? An angry customer? Or was there something deeper at play? She's fine, just shaken up, Samir asserted, stepping protectively beside Jamal. Why don't you tell us who you are first? A flicker of annoyance crossed the man's face, but he took a breath, seeming to collect himself. I'm Amir, he admitted, his posture relaxing slightly. I'm an investor in the company that operates the delivery service. I need to make sure she's okay. There's a lot riding on this. As he spoke, Jamal observed Amir closely. Beneath the dark coat was a man with worry etched on his features, a glint of vulnerability that belied his assertiveness. The community around them began to shift from suspicion to curiosity, each person leaning a little closer. Miss Clara broke the fragile silence. Investing is a big responsibility. You must care about your drivers. Her tone was measured yet inviting, drawing others into her fold of understanding. Yes, Amir nodded, his voice softening. People sometimes see investors as disconnected, but caring for those in my employ is crucial. I can't afford to ignore their well-being. His gaze landed on the driver, and Jamal could almost see the wheels turning in Amir's mind, an unspoken warmth breaking through his stoic demeanor. And what has brought you to her, specifically? Jamal asked, emboldened by the shared heart in the crowd. Something's gone wrong with this delivery, Amir said, urgency returning to his voice. I need to ensure it doesn't spiral into a bigger problem. We need to address issues before they escalate. As Amir spoke, Jamal felt the crowd tightening around them, strung together by hope and tension. Just then, the driver, who had been listening silently, stepped forward, her expression softening as she met Amir's gaze. I'm sorry, I didn't mean for this to happen. I was just trying to find my way. The connection sparked a different sort of understanding as they faced one another, both burdened by the weight of their roles in this moment. Perhaps this stranger was not a threat after all, but an opportunity for growth, a link between their two worlds. They stood there, a small community teetering on the edge of something bigger. Jamal felt the power of their collective presence, an invisible thread tightening around their shared humanity. And then, suddenly, the tension broke. "Let us get her checked out, and then we can figure this out together," Samir suggested. Amir nodded, relief washing over him. But as the group began moving forward to ensure the driver received support, Jamal couldn't shake the feeling that something much larger lingered in the air. What if Amir's arrival ignited changes that no one expected? And if so, what lay ahead for their tight-knit community? As they worked together, a different kind of solidarity formed, one that might just lead them into an unpredictable future. What would this newfound connection cost them? The sun hung low in the sky, casting elongated shadows across the street as the group moved toward the truck. Jamal felt the weight of the community's collective gaze as they all stepped closer to the driver, who could only nod silently, her hands trembling slightly at her sides. Jamal's heart raced with anticipation. Today was meant to be just another day, but here they were, tangled up in a moment that felt monumental. "Are you sure you're all right?" he asked the driver gently, his voice a soft anchor in the chaos. She nodded again, though her eyes told a different story, a flicker of uncertainty that went unnoticed by the others around her. Amir moved closer, his concern palpable as he examined her more closely, searching for signs of distress. "I just want to make sure you're okay. What happened back there?" His voice was steady but compassionate, each word weighted with urgency. I lost my way," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "The delivery everything just spiraled out of control, and I couldn't find the right address." As the driver spoke, Jamal noticed Amir's body tense slightly. He was processing her words, the implications of them written clearly on his face. "Lost directions?" he echoed, as if he couldn't fully grasp how something so simple could have such profound consequences. "Every delivery counts," Amir finally said, the intensity in his voice rising. "I can't afford for one more mistake." The more he spoke, the more the crowd realized, mistakes in the world of delivery often rippled into lost revenues, mistrust, and worse, casualties in their fragile community. A collective sigh of understanding washed over the gathering. It was not just about one driver or one delivery anymore. It was about the very fabric of their interconnected lives. Jamal could feel the tension in the air starting to shift, transforming into something else entirely. Hope and resolve began to bloom. "We'll figure this out together," Samir reassured Amir, patting him on the shoulder. Jamal marveled at the change in Samir's demeanor. Gone was the apprehension, in its place stood solidarity and determination. This connection, this shared understanding, held the power to forge new paths. Perhaps they could help Amir see that this community was more than just numbers on a balance sheet, more than just deliverables. It was about people, their lives, their aspirations, and their shared struggles. Jamal felt emboldened by the thought, a flicker of anticipation igniting within him. "But how do we prevent this from happening again?" Miss Clara interjected, her voice steady. "Is there a way to keep our drivers safe?" Amir hesitated, his thoughts colliding calculations versus human emotions. For the first time, Jamal saw that mask of stoicism slip. "I'll have to look into better routing systems and clearly marked addresses. I want our drivers to feel empowered and safe," he replied, his gaze earnest. The crowd erupted with murmurs of agreement, their unity beginning to solidify around shared hopes for improvement. Jamal looked around, a smile creeping onto his face as he saw their community lifting together, buoyed by Amir's willingness to listen. Perhaps they were on the edge of something transformative. As the conversation pivoted to potential solutions and brainstorming ideas, Jamal felt that something else was brewing beneath the surface. Could they really influence Amir's perception of his role in their lives? Could he change the way they worked together? But just as they began laying out plans, a sudden shout erupted from behind them. "Wait! You have to see this!" Jamal's heart skipped a beat. "What now?" He turned, curiosity and dread intertwining as the crowd parted to reveal a group of kids, their faces pale with shock. They stood pointing toward the other end of the street, where smoke curled ominously into the sky. "Is that a fire?" Jamal urged, horror creeping in. "What happened?" The shift in mood was immediate, the feeling of solidarity evaporating as they looked towards the smoke, dread hanging thick in the air. Jamal's mind raced. What if this fire was somehow connected to the turmoil that had begun at the truck? What would it mean for their community, their connections, their hopes? Together, they rushed to the scene, forging a new journey filled with potential yet shadowed by uncertainty. What other truths would they discover today? Jamal pushed through the crowd, heart pounding in rhythm with his quickened steps. The smoky haze loomed overhead like a grim harbinger, and the murmur of panic grew louder with every stride. As they approached the source of the smoke, a scene unfurled before him that felt surreal. A rundown community center, once a haven for gatherings and celebrations, now stood engulfed by flames. The acrid scent of burning wood and plastic stung Jamal's eyes, making his stomach twist. "This can't be happening," he whispered, half to himself, half to the universe. Miss Clara stumbled forward, her voice trembling with urgency. There might be people inside. Panic clouded her features, and she looked ready to sprint toward the flames. "Wait." Amir's deep voice rang through the chaos, strong enough to draw attention. "We need to call for help first. Nobody goes in there until we know it's safe." The crowd halted, a collective understanding solidifying among them. Jamal's eyes darted around. Heartbeats echoed in his ears as urgent conversations sprang up. Some called for emergency services, others futilely shouted for anyone trapped inside. The fire flickered menacingly, almost consuming every ounce of hope in its flame. "We can't just stand here," one of the kids yelled, tears streaming down his cheeks. "What if they need us? We can't let them burn." Jamal stepped closer to the child, his heart aching at the fragile, innocent fear written across the boy's face. "You're right," he said softly, "but we can't rush in without a plan. Let us think. What do we know about the center? Are there backup exits? Is there anyone we should be looking for?" The boy gulped, processing Jamal's words. I think my little sister has been hanging out there with friends. They were supposed to be practicing for the talent show." That hit differently for Jamal. The community center wasn't just a building, it held dreams, laughter, and promises for the future. He felt fire igniting in him, not the destructive kind, but the kind that unites people in times of chaos. "Okay, let us divide up," Jamal said, surprising even himself at how decisively he spoke. "Amir, you call the fire department and direct the crowd. Miss Clara, can you check the alley behind the center? They might have escaped there." He turned to the kids. "You all stay close, and keep an eye out for your friends. We'll find them." A flicker of hope sparked back into the boy's eyes, and with a deep breath, he nodded. Jamal took a moment to collect himself, driving away the dark shadows of fear hovering around them. They spread out, each tasked with a purpose. Jamal headed toward where the smoke thinned, hoping to keep an open mind while scanning for any signs of life. With each step, he reminded himself that community was about standing together in adversity. He clung to that truth, hoping it would carry them through this nightmare. As he rounded the corner, the chaotic sounds of the fire faded, leaving a deafening silence. He spotted a figure hunched by the back entrance, shadowed by the smoke. His breath caught. "Hey! Are you okay?" Jamal called out, rushing forward. The figure lifted their face, revealing wide, frightened eyes. "Help!" the person croaked, reaching out unsteadily. Just as Jamal reached them, another roar of flames erupted from within, illuminating the darkening skies. In that moment, he understood, this was not just about saving a building or even lives, it was about confronting the fears that threatened to tear their community apart. "Stay close!" he shouted, grabbing the figure by the arm. Together, They turned back toward the sound of voices, the flames pursuing them with greedy hunger. Would the community rally together in their darkest hour, overcome their fears, and rise from the ashes? Jamal felt the weight of that question in the pit of his stomach as they burst into the open air, breathless and alive but still facing an uncertain future. What awaited them beyond the smoke? Would Amir's resolve hold firm, or would this catastrophe unravel the bonds that had just begun to form? Jamal pulled the frightened figure away from the choking smoke, his heart racing. As they stumbled back, he realized it was a girl, no older than 10. She was shivering but managed to stand, the shock in her eyes mingling with tears. "Where are your friends?" he asked urgently, scanning the alley behind the center. "Did you see anyone else?" I was hiding. I thought I could help the other kids." Her voice wavered, filled with the kind of innocence that made Jamal's heart ache. "Hey, you did exactly what you needed to do," he reassured her, kneeling to meet her gaze. "You're brave. We'll find them. Let us go." Together, they started back toward the commotion. As they emerged from the narrow alley, Jamal's senses sharpened. There were still voices, some filled with desperation, others rallying to unite. Amir stood at the forefront of the crowd, still trying to maintain order. Jamal caught his eye, relief washing over him. "I found someone," he shouted, pointing back to the girl. Amir rushed over, his face softened by concern. "Where's everyone else?" Amir asked, kneeling in front of the girl. "Did you see your sister?" The girl shook her head, panic and grief spiraling in her eyes. "I don't know, they were all in the big room practicing." The weight of her words settled over them like a shroud of helplessness. Jamal felt the energy of the crowd shift, a dark ripple of fear spreading. "We can't just wait. We have to check. There might still be people inside," he urged, his voice firm. Amir hesitated, glancing back at the towering flames licking the night sky. The sirens of the fire trucks approached, their wails echoing through the night air. Everyone was on edge, but Jamal could see a flicker of determination in Amir's eyes. "Okay," Amir finally agreed, "but we go in pairs. If we don't find anyone, we get out. Everyone understand?" A chorus of affirmations echoed through the assembled crowd. Jamal could feel their resolve solidifying. What had started as chaos was turning into a collective force of bravery. "Let us regroup. Everybody who can help, follow me." Jamal raised his voice, feeling the pulse of adrenaline surge through him. He led the way back towards the community center, flanked by Amir and a few others willing to help. The heat intensified as they neared the entrance, the smoke swirling like a darker tide before them. Jamal clenched his fists, forcing himself to breathe steadily. He felt the girl holding onto his sweater tightly, her small fingers digging into the fabric. "We're going to find your sister," he whispered, though the words felt both reassuring and uncertain. Amir led the charge into the interior, the glow of flames casting eerie shadows against the walls. The group fanned out, peering into room after room, calling out for anyone who might be trapped. There was no response. Just the roar of the fire growing more intense with every second. Jamal's heart raced. Where were they? He could barely think as smoke enveloped him, stinging his eyes and making it hard to breathe. He had to hold on to hope. Just as despair began to settle in, a sound echoed through the smoke: laughter. No, not laughter. Help. We're in here. A frantic voice pierced through the chaos. His heart leaped, adrenaline thrumming through his veins. This way. Follow me. Jamal shouted, heading towards the sound that felt like light in the darkness. Would they reach the children in time? Was hope still alive in that swirling sea of flames, or were they running straight into danger? Every instinct told him to keep moving. He exhaled, focused only on the voice that ever so slightly pierced through the din. The stakes had risen, and now the quest took on a new urgency. As Jamal pushed through the smoky haze, determined to find the source of the cries, the warmth of the flames encircled him. Fear gripped his heart, but he wouldn't allow it to drown him. Stay close. He shouted to the girl beside him, whose small hand was still tightly clasped around his sweater. "We're almost there." The rest of the group followed his lead, their footsteps echoing off the walls as they pressed on. Jamal called out again, "We hear you. We're coming." The laughter they had heard before a sign of hope filled him with determination. Each step felt heavier, but it was no match for the adrenaline pumping through his veins. Suddenly, he spotted a flicker of movement from a room just ahead. The door was partially ajar, and the sound of muffled voices spilled through the crack. Jamal rushed forward, pushing the door wide open, and there they were, a group of kids, huddled together, their frightened faces illuminated by the orange glow of the fire outside. "Follow me," Jamal urged, his voice steady despite the chaos swirling around them. The children looked at him with wide eyes, unsure of what to do. "It's okay. Just stay close." His voice calmed them, and they began to move toward him, hesitant but trusting. Amir arrived at the doorway behind him, scanning the room anxiously. "Are you all safe?" he asked, relief washing over his features as he caught sight of the kids. "Do you know where the exit is?" "Yes." One of the older kids replied, his voice tinged with urgency. "We can show you. Let us go," Jamal said, leading the way as Amir pushed them forward. The children filed out of the room, fear still etched on their faces, but hope flickering at the edges as they followed Jamal. The flames roared behind them, but he wouldn't let that deter them. He envisioned the safety of the outside world with each step, but just as they reached the threshold, a loud cracking noise filled the air. It sounded like the building itself was protesting under the heat, and a piece of the ceiling crumbled near the entrance. The group halted momentarily, fear gripping them again, but Jamal shouted over the cacophony, "Keep moving. We can make it." With quickened steps, they ducked through the doorway, emerging into the open air, where the crowd had gathered outside, hearts racing and eyes peeled for any sign of danger. Miss Clara rushed toward them, wrapping the girl into a tight embrace, her own relief palpable, a connection of strength binding them together. Hearts raced as they counted heads. Everyone was accounted for. The children were safe. Relief washed over Jamal, but he couldn't shake the weight of the fire still raging behind them. As the sirens wailed closer, the blue and red lights danced over the panicked crowd. Jamal felt the rush of togetherness ignite, the bittersweet knowledge that they had triumphed in this moment. He turned back toward Amir, who looked over at him with a newfound understanding, the tension in his shoulders easing as he realized they had faced a real challenge together. Amir's eyes locked with Jamal's, and in that moment, words were unnecessary. They both understood now that they were bonded, a community brought together not just for the worse but for the better. "Thank you," Amir said, his voice filled with sincerity. "If we can face something like this together, we can tackle anything." With the fire crews arriving, extinguishing the flames, and the children's laughter slowly returning, Jamal felt the weight of hope pressing against the fears. The invisible ties connecting them deepened, more resilient than before. What had started as a simmering tension melted away, replaced by a vision of collaborative recovery. As Jamal looked out over the crowd of his community, he felt that this was the beginning of something beautiful. Maybe it was the small moments of courage that would lead them to heal and thrive together, pushing aside the shadows that had once divided them. They might have faced adversity today, but it only cemented their connection. Indeed, the journey had just begun. It was time to rebuild, reimagine, and move forward, together. And if you, dear friends, resonated with this journey and this transformation, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss future exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and feel a part of this amazing community. And don't wait not even one more second to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Connect with the journey, and let us keep empowering each other. Comment your thoughts and feelings about this ending below. Let's spark a conversation.